It is 4 o'clock. I'd like to call the August 28th, 2023 EIC meeting to order. And I'll ask Councilmember Herring to lead us in the invocation, please.
Happy to. Do we stand to pray?
We can, if you'd like us to.
We don't have to. We're just as close to the Lord sitting down. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for a beautiful place to live. Thank you for the hint of rain today. Please send more. Thank you for all these volunteers who are serving our community and trying to do the best with the information they have at all times. Thank you for the citizens visiting who are here today, who will share their ideas and opinions with us. And thank you for city staff who helps make all of this happen. And give us strength and wisdom, peace and honor. For it's in your holy name we pray. Amen.
A couple of housekeeping things. Mr. Hornis said we had a visitor, so would you care to introduce our, well, we have lots of visitors, but one that will soon be employed by our city.
Yes, we have many visitors today. We're excited that everybody's here. Looking forward to hear what everybody has to say. But one person in particular, Mr. Dalton Rice, over here in the corner, has been selected as our new city manager. Here a month early, so you know, I told him to go take a break before you get here, but he didn't listen. So.
Welcome.
We're glad to have you here today. A couple of housekeeping things just before we get started. There are a lot of citizens here today, so thank you all for your interest. It helps us make informed decisions, so that's much appreciated. From our board procedures, speakers are limited to keep their comments brief and relevant. Abusive, rude, or inappropriate conduct by speakers is not tolerated. Remarks are to be limited to the subject at hand, and you will be interrupted if those rules need to be enforced. The chair will rule on the relevance of remarks. Persons making irrelevant, personal, impertinent, overly redundant, or slanderous remarks may be barred from the chair from further comments before the board during that meeting. And I know we won't have to do that, but just as a reminder. A person desiring to address the board shall state his or her name and address for the record before proceeding. A speaker remarks are limited to 3 minutes. A person may speak only once on any agenda item. And I think as it was posted on the agenda, item 6A has been postponed. So if you were here to speak about that item, it will be reposted for a public hearing in the future, but for today it will not be discussed. So just giving notice to that item. Okay. All right. Do we have citizen speakers?
We have one. Barbara Jewell Ferguson.
Barbara Jewell Ferguson. I live here in Kerrville. Thank you very much for the time to address the EIC today. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I know you're going into executive session later regarding the grant agreement with Lennar Homes. I'm assuming that's the $5 million grant that was requested a while back. I am not sure how the TERS zone and the special public districting that the city is currently considering for Lennar Homes at that same site will play into also, in addition to that, making a $5 million grant. Often TERS money is used to offset development costs. So it looks like it's kind of could end up being a double dip situation for Lennar Homes on that particular piece of property. Also, given that we are now in stage 4, drought restrictions, also taking into consideration that will not allow new taps to go online, how that will impact whether you want to enter into an agreement with a development that could be limited. And I spoke with Headwaters staff today, and that is a total unknown as to when we could come out of that. Rains now, even if we had heavy fall rains, would not replenish the aquifer to the extent that we could come out. At best, we could hope maybe for heavy spring rains, and then we would come out of that. But again, just please consider what the impact might be and tying up funds to a project that may end up being in limbo for a very long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's our last citizen speaker.
Thank you. Okay. We have two sets of minutes to approve, our regular meeting minutes and then our special called City Council EIC joint meeting. Unless there are any changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve both of those items.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you. Monthly report, KEDC.
Madam Chair, members of the board, go ahead and start with some of our top projects. Project Spacecraft Leaf, it's a manufacturer of space vehicle components. It's a company that we've been meeting with for the last couple of months. They're looking to do business here in the state of Texas, specifically to support the commercial space sector. It's still very preliminary, but we are in a very good position with that particular project. We are one of 5 cities in the state of Texas that we are being considered. And this is a lead that was generated from the aerospace conference that we attended a couple of months ago. As far as aerospace leads, we have been in communication with Mary Rohr at the airport. They are providing us an inventory of buildings and sites. There's a lot of projects right now that require large facilities, which we don't have at the moment. But we continue again to send all these aerospace leads her way and keeping her engaged as far as projects that would be a fit for our area. Project 1954, we hosted this prospect last month. It is a company that is searching for real estate, specifically in an industrial area. We are at the top of the list as far as communities that they're looking at. They are a distributor of construction materials, about $12 million in capital investment. And what I like about the project, it would also have a retail component to it. So it would be an added bonus for the community. Great opportunity. And again, just looking at ways to expand our industrial base here in the area. Project Seafloor, we met with a local entrepreneur who's actually a retired engineer in the offshore oil rig sector, looking at launching a business. Basically, it would be a metal fabricator, very similar to a Fox tank, but this would be for the energy sector to supply deep water oil rigs. They would be in need of welders and engineers, and again, very preliminary. They are in the process of looking for funding, and we are working with the Texas Workforce Commission as far as supplying the workers that they would need. Project Saddle, I think we're pretty familiar with that project. This is an advanced manufacturer of construction materials and components. They are looking at new construction for Kerrville, looking at about 150,000 square foot facility, about 60 to 70 jobs, paying about $54,000 in annual wages for a community. The prospect was in town last week. They're back in town this week. We've been working with them for about a year now, and I would say the last 4 to 5 months they've been here almost on a weekly basis, which is typically a good sign as far as working these particular projects and getting close to the finish line. They are meeting with the equipment suppliers, general contractors, the utility companies. There's several of those that they're going to meet with, as well as local vendors and suppliers. This is a company that is coming in from Latin America. As I mentioned last week, Councilmember Herring, I'd be curious to see, well, let's not get ahead, right? But this is a great example of foreign direct investment, which I think for Kerrville would have been quite some time now. Along those lines, we are going to be scheduling some time next month to meet with the offices of Representative Murr and Senator Flores, as well as the chiefs of staff for the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House. And Texas Workforce Commissioners Brian Daniel and Aaron Demerson, both of which have been in our community several times. And again, it's just part of the process as far as working with the prospect, submitting all these different applications for incentives at the state level, and making sure that these offices are aware of the project and that Kerrville is at the top of their list as well. In addition to that, the Workforce Commissioners Brian Daniel and Aaron Demerson, as well as Julian Alvarez, they've been in our community multiple times here in the last 3 to 4 years. And Aaron Demerson is going to be hosting a Texas Workforce Commission conference for economic developers and chambers of commerce. I think it's in January and February of next year. So again, just they're going to be bringing in a lot of people from out of town. Great opportunity to showcase Kerrville, and again, it's just kind of connecting the dots, you know, going back to those relationships, having him come in, tour the community, so on and so forth. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Katie. She'll report on some of the other leads and projects that she has at the moment, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Keisha, okay, I was gonna say.
Good afternoon, President and council members. I am pleased to share with you that we've been working on some exciting projects. Our aerospace and aviation leads have connected us to a woman by the name of C.S. Freeland. She is the founder of the Texas Venture Alliance, and we are working with her to co-host an event here in Kerrville on October 6th called the Texas Venture Crawl. It's an event aimed at startups, founders, funders, and other folks in the venture ecosystem to support and nurture their growth and success. And I have included a printout of the event on the back page of your notes. I hope that y'all will be available to join us. It promises to be a fun event. We do have a keynote speaker that's coming here out of Boston. He recently authored a book that talks about how to avoid failure in your first crucial 2 years. He's got a background from Princeton and an MBA from MIT, and seems like he'll be a real good fit for our community, so we're excited to host him here. The connections with C.S. Freeland also connected us with Justin McKenzie of the Bernie-Kendall County Angel Network, and that has been a fun relationship to explore and see what our neighboring community of Bernie has been up to. I was invited to attend a pitch event in their community to highlight some of the things that they're doing and take away some good ideas that we might be able to leverage in our community here. And it was during that pitch event that I learned of a high school business incubator curriculum that's very fascinating, and I'm doing some research on that in order to share that with our school districts and see if it's something that we can leverage here in Kerr County. In terms of the business retention and expansion efforts, I was able to attend the ACOG final meeting of the I-10 corridor study. We also connected with the Hondo Economic Development Organization. There is a new person in that role that reached out to us recently, looking for collaborative efforts to promote the Hill Country region. We also connected with Amy Story of the Bernie Economic Development Organization, and she's also expressed interest in a collaborative relationship to support greater success in our region. Not as exciting as some of the other projects we've been working on. I did attend some continuing education on business retention and expansion and business credit analysis. The business credit analysis was a personal favorite. We also attended the Chamber Housing and Development meeting, and were present at the interviews for the new candidate for city manager. In terms of projects, Gil kind of hit on those at a high-level overview. Of course, we continue to work with Mount Saddle in their due diligence process. We hosted follow-up phone calls with an aerospace company that is looking at Kerrville, as well as a nutraceutical manufacturing company. Nutraceuticals are like vitamins. They combine the word nutraceutical and pharmaceutical, or vitamins and pharmaceutical, but they manufacture products in the health space. We've also hosted some phone calls with Mary at the airport about exploring possibilities of expanding electric charging at the airport, as well as exploring some opportunities with a company who's interested in helping support our community with some regional air mobility projects. And we've also been in conversations with another existing business here in Kerrville, Project River Branch, about doing some expansion of their existing business. On the childcare front, as you guys know, that's also been a big project that we've been working on. Arthur Ally is a consulting firm that has been in town recently working with the Kroc Center, gathering informational interviews from community partners about needs in the community and helping the Kroc Center determine what their strategic plan is going to be going forward. When I visited with the consultant, he did report that he thought the Kroc Center was going to get their full evaluation from the consultant at the end of October. So we are looking forward to receiving that information from them and finding out how we can support them in our greater enhancement of childcare in Kerr County. I also was able to collaborate with the Doyle Community Center and the Heart of the Hill Heritage Center about possible childcare opportunities and solutions, and I look forward to continuing the conversations with them. And that concludes my report. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Sounds like a lot of good stuff.
Thank you for your hard work. All right. All right, I did see a couple of people come in late, just to make sure, in case you're not used to the format here. If you did want to speak on a particular agenda item, you need to make sure you're signed up before that item, and there is a speaker sign up, and it needs to get to Keisha before that item comes up. So if you're here to speak, I just want to make sure that you have that opportunity, and that's the protocol for doing that. And I believe the speaker request forms are out in the lobby, right? If anybody hasn't filled one out, needs to do that. Okay. All right. And so let's do our project update for for EIC, sorry.
Good afternoon. Thank y'all for taking the time with us today. Nothing new on the airport front. That project has been completed. They have a little bit of the EIC money left over, and they were looking at requests for ways to market the product. And I said, well, bring me back what you're planning to do and let me figure out if you're allowed to use that money for that purpose. And so we're still in the process with them for marketing those box hanger sites that you all helped fund. That's
They need to market them. I thought they were pre-sold or pre-released.
Well, no, the pre-leased were the ones that were built. Remember, y'all paid for the dirt work, right? And so somebody's got to come out there and build their hangar to do that. And that one hasn't, those ones haven't been sold. They have prospects on the line, but nothing's firm yet.
So that is a staff level decision?
No, I'll bring that back to y'all because I want to make sure it's, I mean,
It's like 18,000, how much is left?
it's 19.4, yeah. So it's a substantial amount, so we'll bring it back before. Killdeer Mountain, still moving, same process, going through a lot of inspections. So kind of going back and forth, they got a lot of fire stuff to get done. And so it's kind of, here's the inspection, did we pass? Okay, no, we got to go back, and so we're going back and forth quite a bit. But that still is moving along nicely. Peterson Medical Center campus infrastructure, what you'll see in your financial report later is that y'all have spent the first half of that funds. And so they were substantially complete per our engineering department. And so we paid out the first tranche of those funds. And anybody who's been by the hospital lately can see that that building is going up quickly. And so the second tranche of those funds will be paid out once it opens, per the agreement, or substantial completion. I'm sorry, not once it opens. So Louise Hayes Park Fitness Court is not open yet. I think it still has the chain link around it. So the installers have a punch list of items from our staff that they have to get done before we're ready to open it. Downtown area streetscapes, we are working with K-Pub. They're doing a lot of work out there. You can see the little mini excavators, or not the mini excavator, I can't remember what it's called, the Bobcat, out there moving, blowing and going, doing dirt work. So they're finishing up that work, and then the streetscape portion will come in after that. So we're gonna wait for them to finish before we get started. Downtown River Trail extensions, we have easements in the attorney's office right now, and so we're pretty close to the end of all the easement acquisitions. We've talked to the owners a couple of different times. Challenges in this one, we had a person, our former parks director, who was doing a lot of the discussions and negotiations, and we transitioned, and that was right around the time when EA transitioned out, and so we've got a few more easements to get done, but we should be pretty close to that and ready to move forward with that project.
Who's taking the lead on getting those easements?
Well, it started with me after with Malcolm was done, and then my plate was pretty full. I was able to secure one of them, and then the last ones, like I said, we've got them in Mike's office, and we're pretty close to getting those out for the owners to review. But there was some requests in there, and we had to go back and forth on them a few times. And so so Ashley and Megan Folkerts, our senior management analysts, they're gonna handle those last four. So we're at the finish line. It's just, it transitioned midway, I guess.
Came at a tough time, I understand that, but I'd
need to
like
get
to
it
see
done.
that. We need to keep pushing.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We're on it.
There's momentum on this
Yeah.
thing.
Michael, is there any reason to think that the budget allocation is not still reasonable?
No, I think it benefits us that the last section of the river trail ends at the plaza, where it's concreted up considerably right there. We're certainly going to be looking at value engineering as much as we can and being creative. So I'm hopeful that that's going to be sufficient. Any more questions on Downtown River Trail? All right, and now we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Hewitt here, and he is going to talk to you all about the Nimitz Lake trail estimates that you all funded. And so he's got a little presentation. We were going to have this for you last time, and we weren't able to do it. And so we asked John to come in and didn't want to keep this one holding for too long. So he's going to talk to you about that study real quick.
Good afternoon. One thing, Greg, the Downtown River Trail section is 2 segments, one to the pavilion, and that's estimated at $850,000 construction cost, which is in line with what we originally estimated. And then it's $2.8 million to take it to G Street, and that's still about the same. We think that's reasonable. So I'm going to talk about the River Trail West, present the results of that conceptual study. So that's 4.5 miles around, and I have an exhibit after this that'll kind of show you the route. And we'll talk about regulatory and environmental issues, constructability issues, project cost, and phasing. We looked at the project in 4 different phases. This is kind of hard to look at that scale, but basically the trail starts at the Palacios del Guadalupe condos and goes around the northeast side of the lake, past 1011 Bistro, along the back of the lake behind all those properties to Thompson Road, crosses over on the high bridge there, back around the backside of the lake, past Granger McDonald Park, then over to the water treatment plant. And we don't have enough room to go between the treatment plant and the river, so we'd have to go up to the Thompson Drive, go along the road, and then Thompson Drive gets pretty steep, so we can't keep going along Thompson Drive. We have to go back towards the river and then along the river to Francisco Lemus and tie in there. So that's the overall route. There's different colors for the 4 different phases, and I'll go through each of those phases separately here. So Trail Segment 1 is the one that starts at the condos. We would like to go back behind the existing properties to the Guadalupe Park, back up around Guadalupe Park, and then in front of 1011 Bistro and the tennis courts, and continue along across the Pete Moore property. I don't know what that used to be, the old
Family Sports Center?
Yeah, Family Sports Center, thanks. And then go extend along the back of those properties to the Knapp Crossing Park. There would be a couple of segments in there. You know, if you're familiar with what it looks like around 1011 Bistro, there's a steep side slope, and that's the left picture there. And we would have to have some retaining walls and maybe some cantilevered section that's going to add some cost to that. That segment, we would actually cross 8 separate private property owners in there. So.
So to be clear, are you talking about, on the previous slide, are you talking about on this segment moving up and then back down, or are you talking all along the river?
We would prefer to stay along the river. That may be difficult.
But that picture doesn't represent the location that you're.
Well, it would be along the back of the properties until you get to the park, and then you'd have to go up along Guadalupe Street.
There's no room between 1011 Bistro and the
So
bridge.
yeah, you'd have to be in front of 1011 Bistro for a short segment.
Okay, so it'd be a short segment?
Correct.
Okay.
But in the report, we looked at an alternative to going along Guadalupe Street all the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's not desired. We don't want to do that. There'd be a lot of cost with traffic control devices and separate pavement markings, things like that. And it'd be difficult for those owners to get to their mailbox, and bikes could be going. There's potential problems with staying along the front of that for that. On this first segment, 10 or 15 years ago, the city paid for a study to look at this alignment. So it's already been studied once. And they came out with docks and an amphitheater along that Family Sports Center property. And this is kind of a small version of what they had come up with that I included in our report. Segment 2 would start at Knapp Crossing Park and would continue all the way behind 28 businesses, or 20 property owners and 28 businesses from Knapp Crossing all the way over to the past the lake house and over to the Thompson Road Bridge.
Knapp Crossing is where the boat ramp is by Chili's.
Correct.
That would be the segment.
That'd be where you'd start. You'd go behind those properties, and you'd go behind all the businesses along Junction Highway. So there's a lot of those businesses that go all the way down, including the boat. Boat goes all the way down, Pier 27. Billy Jean's gets pretty tight. Of those 20 different businesses, there's a lot of them that there's going to be some potential conflicts. We accounted for that in our cost estimate, and that added quite a bit of cost to it. So that would be segment 2. There just happens to be a river trail that starts at Thompson Road and continues west a little ways right now. So there's a little hike and bike trail over there that I didn't know about anyway. So that would be, I can't tell what color that is. That's the blue section on this segment. So this would actually go past Cypress Park, a city park as well. We did not include in our cost estimates the cost to go across the TxDOT bridge, with the thinking being that TxDOT would pay with that, or for that with a grant, hopefully. So the estimates that I've come up with don't have any cost in there to cross TxDOT property. Segment 3 is on the back side, the southwest side of the lake. That crosses 4 property owners, and it's pretty straightforward. There's no construction conflicts. This would start at the Thompson Road Bridge and extend to the Granger McDonald Park and stop at that point. And that would be the yellow section on the far left. Segment 4 is the one that's difficult, where you'd start at Granger Park, go up to the water plant, go up to Thompson Road, cut back, and then from Thompson Road, from when you get back along the river all the way to Francisco Lemos, that's a very difficult section. It's very steep. There's concerns about getting in constructability-wise and access-wise, is there's an accident or something back there. This was looked at before when they looked, I guess in a previous study 10 years ago, and they looked at putting a bridge across from Guadalupe Park to this side of the river to avoid that segment. Back when they looked at this 10 years ago, that was in the $2 to $3 million range for that pedestrian bridge. Now we think it's in the $4 to $5 million range, and that has not been included in my overall cost. So that's just a really brief description of that. There are some environmental and regulatory issues that you're going to have to deal with. Just like in the other river trail segments, you'll have to get floodplain development permits. That can be done. Corps of Engineering permits, Protected Species, Parks and Wildlife Department, all of that can be done, and we've had a preliminary evaluation that doesn't see any issues with that, including wetlands and including stormwater pollution prevention requirements. All of that can be done just like the other segments. On the cultural resources side, they identified some old historical sites, archaeologically sensitive mittens and sensitive sites that would have to be dealt with. So most of those are in the area south side of the river, kind of where across from Saddlewood, in that area. That's where those archaeological sensitive areas are. Constructability issues, I think we just need to make sure that ADA can have access to all these segments. It's difficult to tie in. There's some additional cost to tie into the Francisco Lemos section and into the the tall bridge. I mean, you'd have to go back to Junction Highway. If you were to look at the crossing, it's up high where the bridge, where the trail would come in. There's some construction access or contractor access issues for construction back behind the businesses along Junction Highway and then back on segment 4. Construction along Guadalupe Street, we kind of touched on that. Construction behind the businesses. So the cost for all of this is, overall cost, total project is about $22 million. And it's 23,000 feet, so it's about $1 million. It's 4.5 miles for 22,000 feet. Split that up into each of the 4 segments. So $3.5 million, $3.6 million for the first phase, $5.5 million for phase 2, because you've got the additional construction constraints there. Phase 3 is the easiest to build in, $2.7 million, and then almost $10 million for segment 4, which is the most difficult. So that's a very quick overview, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Can you go back to that slide, previous slide?
This one here?
Yes, thanks.
That's today's dollars. So, you know, if you put this off 5 years, it goes up. 10 years.
So if you had all the money, what kind of timeline would that take to do all of that?
Well, if you started today, I would say to have everything complete in the ground, 2.5 years. Some segments are easier. That's if you got all the easements. Now, that could be difficult right there. So that's just construction and design. Easement acquisition is completely separate.
Michael, can you make this presentation available to
Yes.
EIC?
Yep, we will.
Any questions, comments, thoughts?
It's a monster.
Thanks for your work.
Thank
That
you,
phase
John.
4 is a problem, man.
I can't
Yeah,
see
that'd
how
be
that would be.
difficult.
As a child, I trespassed all over there.
From a staff standpoint, we saw safety issues with someone being down there. No one knows you're down there. And phases 1, 2, and 3 made a lot of sense. Phase 4 had a lot of challenges from a staff standpoint where we saw it. It's great to tie it all in together, but you're up on the highway not the highway, the spur, for quite a bit. And then that long section between the water plant and Francisco Limos it's really isolated with that sheer cliff there. So.
And then you're not on a river trail for a portion of that. You're on a sidewalk along the road for a little bit there.
Yeah.
John, you mentioned a bridge, I guess, just east of the dam.
Correct, right, from Guadalupe
So
Park.
that'd be like a low water bridge just below the dam, is that?
Well, I think they were looking at putting it above the 100-year water surface, so it'd be fairly high.
Suspension bridge, right?
Yeah.
One time they talked.
Yeah,
But
right.
you have city property on both sides too, so that's the one thing you have going for you.
Yeah. And they have, right before we came up to Kerrville, leaving San Antonio, they opened up the land bridge in what was that park? On the
Harbinger.
Yeah, Harbinger Park. But and I'm not talking about that. They had just a smaller walking bridge section that went up to it. That's a really neat example because it's not much, right? It's got see-through and it's fairly basic. I'm sure it's expensive, just as expensive as it would be to cross that, but it's an interesting thought. It is the challenge of that is certainly the cost of getting across there.
Well, my structural engineer thinks you could make it the marquee of Kerrville. You could light it up and people would want to come see it. It costs $6 million to do that. Thank you all.
John,
Thank you, John.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
John. we have anybody signed up to speak on this issue? Okay, well, we have John. Any other questions? John? Okay. All right. Very good. Then we're going to move on to item 5C, monthly financial report.
Good afternoon, board members. All right, I'll be really quick. So we're looking at July financials and on to the regular. So we're looking at your current period and columns to the right. July sales tax came in at $446,000 for the month. That is May sales. This is a 10% increase compared to your July of 22 numbers. We did find that there was a large future period payer in there, but last year we had the same thing, a large future period payer, so it's kind of apples to apples on that note. Construction was up. We have a lot of projects going on around here, and that pulled in about 2 times the amount it did last July. So looking at fiscal year to date, $4.193 million has come in so far. We estimated you'd be $4.197, and so you're a little short of $4,200 for sales tax this year, but you know, we've been watching that pretty closely. And then we did get August sales tax in. It came in at $448,000. It is a little short, almost 1% short over last August. Just really the larger categories, retail, manufacturing, they're kind of flat with what was going on last year. So just keeping a watch on that. Right now, overall year to date, we're still looking at a 6% increase right at budget. Next revenue down is your interest income, $33,000 for the month, so you're looking at $252,000 so far this year. Expenditures down the way, City of Kerrville Administrative Services contract, your final quarterly payment to KEDC, and then debt transfers for the month. And then we transferred over $125,000 towards the Downtown River Trail project. So total expense $310,000 for the month, and your net change in position was $170,000. Year to date is $2.5 million. All right, on to cash flow. 6.1 ending cash balance for end of July. Your next column over is your remaining 2 months of the fiscal year. And as Mr. Hornis said, we did release the first tranche of the Peterson contract. And you did have an investment maturity in August. We will be reinvesting that. And then columns to the right are your remaining, or your new fiscal year 24 budget projections. And last one here is your financial analysis. Sales tax comparison, top left chart, your cash and investments to the right there. You're earning 5.36% in your pool account, and then your investments are right there at 5.28. And then you have your remaining project balances there at the bottom. That is all we have for July. Any questions?
Thank you, Trina. Questions?
All right, thank you.
Item 6A is to be postponed, so we'll move to item 7A. This is Administrative Services Contract between City of Kerrville, EIC, and City of Kerrville.
So we have a couple of changes to this one, and we wanted to discuss those with y'all and see if you were amenable to them, or if you want to continue with the contracts that we have for this year. What you'll notice in there, the highlighted sections, first of which is if Mr. Hayes has to talk to any outside counsel, then he'll come talk to you all first before we go ahead and do that. The second is budgeting. It's just, we just included that in there, so we already do that for y'all. Third, we have the annual audit that EIC's audit will be rolled into that city's annual audit for consideration and approval by the city. And I think the biggest two is Article 2 compensation. What we put in there for this year was $205,000. On Article 3, the term, we put in a 5-year term. And going back to Article 2, we put in a 4% escalation clause in there. So that would go from 205 to 213, and it would kind of ramp up. And so we didn't want to have to keep coming back each year to you all for what seems to amount to roughly the same contract each year, but we didn't want to speak for the board. So we wanted to get your take on what you think about putting this as a 5-year term, and then we'd come back to you after.
This has never had a 5-year term before.
It's every year. It's been every year. So happy to continue doing that. This is a little bit, makes that, this portion.
Michael,
of-
what has been the history of annual changes in the amount? Is it normally gone up by a similar amount every year?
I think through COVID, it stayed the same. Yeah, so 2 to 2.5%, so this would be higher than that. This is in keeping with what we're seeing with some of the other contracts that we have. So we've got the 10% increase that KEDC has with you all and with the city. I think this keeps in line with our costs on the city side for the administration of it. Those are continuing to increase, and so we didn't keep yours flat. We had that match our increases. So, but historically, I don't have it going back, but I would say 2 to 3%.
Has that been pegged to anything, or just kind of just something that feels right?
Making assumptions for sure, right? Because we don't know if it's going to be 2% or 10% for inflationary factors, right? So it's a plug number for sure. Bam.
And is this going to be for sure every 4% every year, or are you going to be looking at your costs and prorating some of those?
We have it put in here as going to go to 4%. So I think basically we wouldn't be coming back to you for a few
20%
years.
increase over 5 years, basically.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
It's 200,000 now, so the first year would be,
So it's 205 in this year's, but this upcoming
Well, it's
budget,
about
y'all approved
$8,000.
205. So it was 200 and then it was 205. So that was 2.5%. That's right.
But at the end, we'd be paying an additional $51,000, $55,000, somewhere in that vicinity.
Over fifth year, yeah. Yes, sir.
How do you guys feel about that?
I don't like spending another $51,000, but I don't know how we can avoid it.
I think it is fair. I mean, obviously, staff costs are going up.
Yeah.
That's
Labor
what I
costs
was
are going
thinking.
up.
Yeah.
I wish it was 2.5%, but I think most of us in business are experiencing more wage inflation than 2.5%.
Yes.
I don't think it's completely unjustified.
I was kind of thinking about the same thing that you were, as far as just your annual salary increases and things of that nature. But it's up to us, so we need to talk about it and decide if we're comfortable with that or not.
Get a motion?
Okay. All right. If there's no more discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Got that, Keisha? Okay. All in favor, please let me know by raising your hand. Thank you. All right. Now on to the item where I think most of you all might be here for, item 7B.
So we've got mostly the same presentation that we gave to City Council. There's some folks in the room here that weren't here for that. So it's got quite a bit in it, and shouldn't take too long to get through. But hopefully that'll answer some of the questions for folks in the house. And thank you, Martin. And we will get started. So what we'll do is we'll discuss the projects that City Council recommended for inclusion. We'll discuss some of those ones that were on the list but weren't selected. And then we'll talk about the financial implications for you all at the levels that were requested. And we can go into detail about higher or lower values that y'all would want to consider as well, as far as the debt capacity and the bond obligation, as far as the annual debt service. And then finally, we'll go over the scenarios that were discussed at the city council meeting. Okay? All right. I will skip through some of this stuff. The city council, at the end of this though, the city council requested that you all consider a $20 million issuance. It's a big number to say out loud. This all started with 3 projects that the city knew we had a lot of deterioration on and sort of getting close to the end of their useful life. Cali Theater roof and HVAC system, the Olympic swimming pool, and the Scott Schreiner Golf Course. Really, the greens was the starting point for that discussion. Those were about 23 years old, 24 years old, I believe. So as we moved into those discussions, we have budget numbers for most of this right now, for the Cali Theater and for the Olympic pool. For the golf course, at this point, we still have an estimate because we haven't been able to engage a consultant to help us move through that discussion. So in the same way that we've done for Singing Wing Park Master Plan or River Trail Master Plan or Nimitz Lake, we want to have somebody come in. So we have identified a person to come do that, but we have yet to kind of say yes to moving forward with that.
How much is that?
$15,000. And so one of the questions was, can we be reimbursed for the funds through the bond? And the bond council said that you can do that so long as you have a resolution saying you have the intent to go out for that. And so we'll get into that later. So the Cali Theater. So last year we asked Peter Lewis and his team to give us some estimates, and he came up with some scenarios that were shockingly big numbers for what we assumed would be about $1 million, $1.5 million. Turned out to be closer to $3 million. And the cost of things is just getting more and more expensive. And so based on those numbers in August, that was $2.9 million, sorry. We know that those numbers have increased. We don't know exactly how far those numbers have gone up, but we requested that this would be $4 million allocated towards this, hopefully with some savings towards that renovation, but unsure exactly what that would be. Now, the $2.9 million estimate was over 3 phases to be done over multiple years. The rationale behind that was you could do this all in one window, 4 months, but that would probably mean shutting down the theater entirely for 4 months and just doing the work. And so there became a, it's operating right now. They've got billings out until 24. And so I think we have to kind of figure out the logistics of what is a best case scenario for that. If we can do the first phase and repair the worst of the damage, do the second phase in year 2 and then do the third phase in year 3, that kind of thing, and figure out how to fit that into the schedule. Our schedules are only going to be so pliable when it comes to replacing a roof, but I think we want to be as accommodating to the theater as we can while we go through that process. So we have options for that if we need them. The Olympic pool. So the Olympic pool has been non-ADA for quite a while because it was created before ADA existed. And so the renovations to this include any number of things, but they had kind of a short-term discussion on what needs to get done, and a master plan was created for aquatics so that way the community could see what the options were. I don't know if you all, I think during the joint meeting we saw option B, which was $28 million at the time. And so I didn't bring option B here with us today. I just brought option A. So after the feasibility study was done, these were the bullet points listing out some of the issues that we had and we knew we needed to get fixed. And this is what option A looked like. And that was at the time $5.3 to $5.8 million. We did, again, those percentages, looking at the interest rate percentages. They have plugged in 3%. Now this whole thing was done before the world tipped over on its head. So we had some conversations with the folks who came up with this, Marmon Mock, and they were reluctant to say anything less than, they thought 7 would be a number that made more sense. I know. Yeah. To me, the world seems out of place a lot of days. I can't tell day to day. So, the request for the Olympics for the pool is for $7 million to upgrade this. And that's new mechanical rooms, updated diving boards, getting up to building code, which is a considerable amount. Competition lanes, new seating, new locker rooms, new AC, and building finishes throughout. So this would be, I talked to one Parks employee this morning and they said, this would be so great if you could fix some of this stuff at this place. So not to put that on y'all, it's on me. And then the third one of these initial projects was Scott Shriner Golf Course. The golf greens are, and again, sorry, I skipped over some of this. I had to condense the slideshow. Each one of these things is listed within Kerrville 2050 as an item to consider. The greens and the bunkers are really bad. The pathways and the bridges are too narrow for any of the equipment to get across. There's a considerable amount of work that needs to get done, and we really want somebody who's in that profession to come out and take a look and give us a good assessment. And so the folks from Troon Golf, which is one of the biggest golf companies in the world, has given us just an estimate on what it would be for that, just to go out, take a look, give us their assessment. Here's what needs to change. Here's your best practice. What's good drought resistant greens. Take away your bunkers. What's irrigation systems? What do they need to look like? How would that best serve you? All that kind of stuff. And so the assumptions we have on that one are just on $4 million. Again, that's an assumption. So we want to get a firmer number, but it's not an unrealistic number based on the conversations that we've had with them thus far, depending on the scale of the work that we can get done. In addition, okay, so that's the three projects that were current city projects, let's put it that way, that were considered. Other areas that were considered that are current projects are River Trail, miscellaneous park improvements, Singing Wind Park, Kerrville Shriner Park, Louise Hayes Park, and Guadalupe Park. So those were all considered as well, and we'll get down, as we get further down the line, we'll see what that looks like in the bond requests. And here are the numbers for the ones that we looked at here. As John said, we put $3 million for that downtown Phase 2 section from Louise Hayes Park to G Street, or the pavilion to G Street. $3 million for existing parks improvements, 1.5 for Singing Wind improvements. KSP has 1.4, and Louise Hayes, we had $200,000. So some of these are one-offs and not bond considerations. I think when we talked about bonding, we talked about projects that were larger, that were going to be hard for EIC to be able to fund at one time, right? So the debt service being a preferable option. Okay, and the fourth project that was selected by the City Council was the AC Shriner House renovation. So the city is currently going through design build, and we got back from Marksman, who is our design build contractor, cost estimate, and the cost estimate was $5.3 million. So the budget for that project for construction is $3.25 million, with about 400 in contingency and another 400,000 for maintenance after the fact, for the future, for that asset replacement fund. And then the HHHC themselves has $1 million for fixtures, furnitures, and equipment. And so for that construction piece, the design build team assumes there's about a $2 million gap to get the building for its full use. This will be first, second, and third floor. The second floor would have a little bit of a limited occupancy, and the third floor would have a staff-only component with no storage in it. Basically, the rationale being the amount of structural work that would need to get done to make this fully occupiable with no occupancy limits was beyond what the design builders could come up with. But within the confines of what they had determined and creating a historic designation for the house, they came up with some occupancies that would work for the second floor. A request was made to go ask the HHHC board if they would like to continue knowing these limitations. They met, they said yes, and so that was placed on the discussion table for inclusion after that fact. And so City Council said, yes, please go forth and ask for that difference. So that delta in there from HHHC, or for the AC Shriner House, is $2 million. Okay? And then again, the guiding principles from Kerrville 2050, that building is mentioned several times. Went through all this already. And the last of these is Granger McDonald Park. So this right here is kind of a concept sketch that J.K. Bernard provided for parking and a boat dock and a boat ramp and a landscaped area that is the colored portion of it is Granger McDonald Park. The portion that is kind of grayed out would be the Guadalupe River Center. So we asked for some cost estimates on this, and what came back was $2.2 million ask from the EIC board, $1.75 million for parking, which includes permeable pavers, landscaping, which is landscaping that would be UGRA approved, let's put it that way. So this would be used as kind of a rainwater harvesting catchment area that would then serve to landscape the property into the future. Riverfront Boardwalk at $321,000 and handicap accessible piers at $125,000. Let's see. Some of you, I know, have better information on this than I do, and so please correct any of those portions that I didn't say correctly. This one is this is a city park, but I think the request from the folks at Upper Guadalupe River Center is for them to operate and maintain this. So this would be kind of a one-time ask from EIC, and then we would create a parks operations and maintenance agreement with the Upper Guadalupe River Center to have them maintain and operate the park. I'm not sure how long, probably 50 to 99-year lease, something like that. I'm not sure how that's all going to play out. This one, I don't have all the pieces to. So I will answer that which I can on this one, but I might direct some questions to some folks here in the meeting. All right. So, do you want to do your part? We'll do your part after. So, I have several options that the City Council considered. And I have these.
So this is a presentation for City Council's consideration as far as the way it was put to them? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I didn't want to deviate from that. I know we had the joint meeting to discuss it together, so I wanted to show you what we showed them. Right.
Yep.
So I gave them 6 different options. First was a $15 million bond. That was those three first projects. And that came out to $15 million. The second was inclusion of the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center. That put the bond at $17 million. The third was including River Trail Downtown Phase 2 at $3 million. And that was the $20 million option 1 version. And then option 2, which is the council version that's before you today, is for Granger McDonald Park improvements and existing parks improvements of $800,000. That's kind of a catch-all, parks, new upgrades to playground, shade structures, that kind of thing, as money would allow. And then I don't feel like I should even go into this because I think we understood everybody to say this was too much, but I wanted to bring it just in case as a discussion topic. So an option for $25 million that includes the River Trail downtown, all those first 4 projects, existing park improvements, Singing Wind Master Plan improvements, KSP improvements, and Louise Hayes Park improvements. And that's option 1 for that $25 million. And then option 2 was existing park improvements, Singing Wind Master Plan, and Granger McDonald Park at $25 million. And council went with this option right here that's in front of you. So I know some of the discussion centered around at the joint meeting about your debt capacity. And so we wanted to have finance come in and talk to y'all kind of about the numbers as they see it and just go over that and get a familiarity with what this would look like for y'all and answer any questions. But before I turn it over to them, do y'all have any questions about what we've gone over so far?
So I think what we should do at this time is if you do have any general questions for Michael and or Julie after she presents, and then we have citizen speakers. So after any just general questions, allow citizen speakers their time to speak, and then perhaps just go through each item as council laid it out, and then any other considerations we want to make.
Okay.
Any general questions for right now from Michael?
Are you anticipating an executive session?
Not on this item.
No.
It's not posted for executive session.
Okay.
Okay, I've got some. So if we do a bond for this, we'll be paying for these improvements for the next 20 years? Is
20
that-
years,
Okay.
yeah.
So what is the useful life of the greens, bunkers, air conditioning at the Cala? Are they gonna be going out within that 20 years and we'll get asked to fund it again before we get through paying off the original bonds?
So their useful life, so the greens are 20 plus years old, right? In a perfect world, like a private country club world maybe, those are 15-year things. But for city courses, they're 20, 25 plus years. The pool, last time it was really renovated was 1970 something. So it's been 40 or so years. So I would safe to say those are gonna outlast the 20 years. And then as far as the roof goes, the last time when that roof was done was 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. I think it's 20 to 22, something like that. So currently they've held for 20 years. Now that roof has needed to be replaced for several years now, and have been kind of maintaining it, you know.
That's kind of my point, and I guess I don't know about large commercial AC systems, if they have a longer life than a residential system, but 20 years is a long time for air conditioning, I would think.
It's not, I mean, some of those are gonna be replaced. I don't think the ask is to come back and ask you again for AC replacement. That's on the city. I mean, we need to.
So I know it's been brought up, at least in the joint meeting, but,
That's up.
of this type of project, what is reasonable to assume that the city budget through the usage fees and so forth can and should be expected to cover out of city budget as opposed to EIC grants?
Sure. I think there's a couple of areas, specifically with the theater and with the golf course, where you could place a usage fee on it that would help over the years add to a capital replacement fee. I mean, they get thousands of rounds at the golf course, and the same for the theater. The aquatics is more like a park in and of itself. It's $1 fee to get in there. I wouldn't expect that would come back in any meaningful way as far as capital replacement. The River Center is, as I said, I think the request is a one-off for you then to turn that over, for the city to basically turn over management of that to the nonprofit to then run and also handle the capital maintenance of that.
What would happen if the nonprofit failed?
Well, I've said this, I think I said it at the last meeting. When we build parks and we do these kind of things, we put asphalt down and we do pretty bare landscaping. We have native grasses and leave it at that. That's kind of, we usually have enough to make that happen. So I don't know the answer to that question other than if it came time to replace permeable pavers and to do work on that and it was back on the back of the city, that we would have to seriously evaluate how that gets done.
Who would actually own the boat ramp and the boardwalk?
These are all good questions. It's a city park, right? It's a city asset, and it would be under the management of.
My question really is, because it's gonna happen, we're gonna get a big flood and a cypress tree's gonna come down and take that boardwalk out. So is that an insured asset? Is that,
It would be an insured asset through TML, because it's a city facility. But, should the insurance have a gap in there, again, my assumptions, because we haven't vetted this thing out all the way, and we don't have any agreements set up yet, is that any gap would be filled by the Upper Guadalupe River Center, not
if
by the
they're still in
city.
business? Assuming. that they're still
Assuming
in
yes.
business. A lot of gaps.
General questions?
I have a question. So just as the Heritage Center has put in $400,000 for future maintenance, would we be able to utilize some of this bond package money to put in a maintenance fund for the future for the parks?
You would not, because the funds for this have to be spent within 3 years. So this-
90% of the funds have to be spent. in 3
95%,
years.
yeah, 99.
95?
I think it's 90 or 95?
95.
It's 95.
So how did the Heritage Center get that $400,000?
That's not a part of this bond
It was
package.
already-
That's already in there,
From
Part of
through
the city budget.
donations they received,
Oh,
City.
okay,
city.
okay.
So it's meant for it's meant for the one-offs, the bonds are, not for the long-term maintenance of them.
Okay.
That's usually the distinction between a bond is, it's for the physical thing, and then the maintenance you have to cover through your operations expenses. All right, if that's enough for now, I'll start, ma'am.
One more?
Yeah, sure.
I have one more. I know that the park, we had looked at the number of ways that the 2050 plan could be cited, and the whole idea of energizing Nimitz Lake, that there is some very specific parts of the 2050 plan that reference the need to create a more recreational space around Nimitz Lake. And I just noticed that there was nothing here that reference the 2050 plan for that Granger Park.
I probably,
I think you alluded to it, every item on here.
yeah, I didn't have a listed thing on there, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's in there, for sure.
Okay.
If I go into the Parks and Rec Board recommendations, it's not on the top of that list. It's not on their recommended list, as far as the first several projects. But that's what the city council chose, to come with a request for. So Singing Wind was kind of the biggest next project as far as the Parks and Recreation Board was concerned. And then that was presented to the council, but I'm providing you just what city council is asking of you tonight. But yes, ma'am, it is. Nimitz Lake, an area development plan around Nimitz Lake, the river trail going all the way around it. I mean, Nimitz Lake is certainly a gem. It's absolutely beautiful.
Michael, my understanding was when we had that joint workshop with our board and the city council, when it was pointed out that the Granger McDonald Park request was not in the master plan for Parks and Recreation. But I think it also, when the criteria were put up for being considered to be in the plan, one of the criteria was that they weren't going to consider putting money into a new park development. Is that correct?
Well, I think, yes. And I think new park development, and the biggest concern from new park development is insufficient staffing and capital to cover the cost of that. And so I think in our discussion so far of if the management of the park and frankly the capital replacement of those things is borne by the River Center, and we memorialize that in agreement, that then does not add to the duties of the staff on an annual basis from a maintenance and operations standpoint, so.
Michael, I appreciate that, but my point is that I think it's been said in several meetings that the proposal to put money into Granger McDonald Park was not part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and not prioritized. It wasn't even in the plan. My point is it was never considered. There was never an opportunity to even present it for consideration.
Well, Ashley can speak to that for me.
It's actually in the master plan. So Granger McDonald Park, the development of
Nimitz Lake and the river was covered over various Kerbal 2050 action items, and that carried over to the Parks Master Plan. So Granger McDonald Park actually is considered in the Parks Master Plan. It's under the miscellaneous park improvements under number 13 on page 40.
So I think part of the concern.
I appreciate what you just said, but my understanding was it was a question of prioritization. To be prioritized, didn't something, priority was not going to be given to, for new development in the park, is that correct?
That's the recommendation from the Parks and Recs Board, yes, sir.
All right, so Julie, you
All
have a
right, we got
presentation
some-
for us?
Julie, ready to go?
Good afternoon. Try to be brief. Most of these things,
Oh, yeah, sorry, I stole it. It's mine. Can't take it from me.
you can be in charge. So most of these things you guys have seen before. We've been talking about cash flow and then the impacts of each different bond size issuance. To answer the question on useful life that just came up, so we cannot issue bonds that exceed a useful life. So all those things are taken into consideration when we do like Standards & Poor's calls and those kind of things. We have to go through a process of showing useful life of each asset that we add or maintain. So however that looks, the debt can't exceed the useful life. So I don't know if that helps answer that question a little bit. And different assets have standardized useful life, so we use those standardized processes unless we find a reason to give it a different useful life, in which case then we have to be able to prove that up. So we've been looking at cash flow a lot with you guys over the past few months. The beauty of it is now we have a model that's built out that pretty much whatever scenario or expense you want to see, we can give you an ending fund balance. So I'm not going to go over all of this because you've seen it quite a bit, but we started basically showing you each of the 3 potential debt issuances that we've talked about, just so you can see here. One thing that we didn't change but added, you can tell the yellow highlight there, that would be new potential debt. This specific one is on the $15 million issuance. The green highlighted area there, those are potential future projects, and those are just plug numbers. So what we were trying to do is say, okay, if you had new debt, then what is your ending cash balance? And that's great, but what if we had other projects, and what does that look like? And so we highlighted that just to show you those aren't to anything specific, just kind of a plug there, looking at just historical numbers and what you guys have done for projects and before. A little bit of information, I looked back at the last 10 years. The lowest fund balance that EIC had was back in 2019, and that was $2.4 million that we had in cash reserves, and then the highest was this year that we have. And so 4 million seems to be about the average. So you can see there over time with some super conservative sales tax estimates that even with this new debt and those plugs for new projects, still a pretty healthy cash balance there. So you can tell where the projects slow down. So we did plug the revenue for potential bond issuance and the offsetting expense divided over 3 years, just so you can see where the project expense is for these potential projects.
Julie, is there any reason you didn't plug any projects into 24 or 25? 2024 and 2025?
So, yes, because there's none committed. So we don't have projects committed, and we budget for EIC based on what your commitments are, because they're usually one-off kind of stuff. So when they come up, you'll see when Trina gives a financial report every month, those are added to committed projects. So it looks like a budget amendment, but we really don't have to do a budget amendment for EIC. We just update that so that you can see it. So because we don't know why there's not an expense there.
No, we have it in there. So that green, that highlighted green one in 4 years down the road, that just shows plug number for future
Right.
project X and this much.
So I guess he's just
He's
asking
saying
why
additional.
don't we have them in 24 and
Additional, yes.
We don't have any money committed in this spreadsheet on 2024 and 2025 for projects that may come up in the next 2 years.
That's right, yes. And Michael, I think that where that's coming from is the projects that were kind of pending out there on the books and the timeframes, and there weren't any falling in there as far as outstanding asks. But we can plug that, for
Yeah,
sure,
we
with,
can.
a made-up number. And like I said, that's the beauty of this, is we can adjust those numbers that we have in there, we can add to them, and to be honest with you, I don't have an answer for that, but that's an easy fix. I think that goes back to some pending conversations that we've had with potential asks coming. Okay, this is the same spreadsheet, just looking at the $20 million. Again, this is going to align a lot closer with council's recommendations, and of course, it's going to be the purview of this board as far as what we do from here. But as this kind of goes in line with what Michael said a while ago, and again, your yellow is the new debt, green is potential future projects. And then you can see that new debt is about $300,000 more per year in this $20 million scenario than it is in the $15 million scenario I gave you. Again, cash balance is still, healthy. It's above what the average has been, but again, that just depends on what kind of projects you might foresee coming down the pipe from the board's direction. And I know this was above the appetite of EIC when we met at workshop, but because we presented it, I wanted to go ahead and show it to you. $25 million would be about $400,000 more per year than the $20 million issuance. So you can tell just what the average balance does over time. They're just looking at that. I do have a chart that's going to show you. I know there was some concern about debt to revenue percentage, so I brought some of that information into just to kind of show you how that looks over time.
Has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, because I think I remember either you or Michael talking about the sales tax revenue bonds. You talked about them, that is a whole different way of looking at that bond versus a municipal bond that the city gives, that the debt to revenue basis wasn't as important, or it seems like that, like you could go for higher amounts within those bonds?
So I'll talk to you about capacity in just a couple of slides, so
Okay.
you have a little bit better grasp on that. It
Okay.
may answer that question for you.
Okay.
But on this slide here, I think this goes back to answering some questions that were brought up during the workshop as far as percent of debt payments to how much revenue we have coming in each year. And so you can see with each issuance kind of what that percentage looks like. And then over on the right, there's some detail of that just kind of tells you what the estimated revenue is per year, and then what the expenses per. Now, that when I say current debt plus, that just means that's assuming our current debt, the $1 million we have on the books now, plus any additional issuance. So you can see that change over time. And this is good information for budget. And I think to your question, Ms. Hammond, is that when financial advisors are going out and looking at capacity, they're not looking at percent of debt to revenue. That's not what they're looking at. And so I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about that. Right now, there's not a policy in place, either legally or through the city, that limits EIC's debt capacity as far as percentage of revenue. However, we can certainly add that. We have other policies within the city's financial management that addresses some EIC investment policies, those kind of things. So it's, if that's something the board wishes to do at a later time, we can certainly add a policy for that. Basically, what we looked at is every EIC has different goals, different objectives, and so some of them have a higher debt just because based on what they do, and then some have lower, so some don't issue debt at all. So really, that would just be up to this board to decide if that's something you wanted to look at going forward. So for capacity, when you're trying to decide how much we can issue, and so this is kind of a mixed slide. So the chart on the right just gives you pretty much what I told you right now over time, just your percent of fund balance. So we look at almost every fund as far as fund balance. So how much do we have in reserves? Can we, if we had to, break into fund balance to be able to pay debt or any other obligations that we might have? You guys have a super healthy fund balance. Again, this is the highest fund balance that I had seen. It was the highest since I had been here, so that's why I just kind of dug back and looked. It was, historically in that $4 million average is usually what's been in the bank. And most of the projects that y'all are going to approve will be multi-year. There's very few that'll be one-off $5 million at a time or $10 million at a time or whatever that might be. So municipal debt underwriters really look as if the fact, do you have enough annual revenue forecasted over time, and then historical proof of that to be able to pay your debt. And so what's your debt coverage? So if 1.5 is your debt coverage, then you have 50% more than you need to pay your debt plus your regular operating expenses. And so 2 times debt coverage just means you can pay debt bills twice. So that's how forecasters look at it from the municipal bond side when we say, what's the city's general fund capacity to issue debt? They're looking at it over time and then ability to pay and then what are historical expenses. And so that's kind of the same scenario they took here. Different rules, of course, apply to sales tax revenue bonds, as we've talked about a little bit, and they're not property tax backed. So just kind of like water fund revenue bonds, they're just a different animal. So basically this just shows you your debt service coverage. Right now we're at a 2.5 times debt service coverage. So super healthy as far as our financial advisors are concerned. That's what they do all the time. And for most of you who know her, has been doing municipal debt for 35 years. So we let her guide some of the big questions that we have, and so she was very comfortable with any of these issues. Just really it'd just be, what you guys have an appetite to do. So most funds by practice have about a 25% fund reserve. Y'all have upwards of 100%. We had a real slowdown there on projects and stuff during the COVID time and a big influx of sales tax. So we had a big buildup during that time that we just haven't had a lot of committed projects for. So anybody have any questions on any of those things? Okay, and I do have a copy of this for y'all if you want a hard copy to take home so you can see this cash flow. And then if there's, numbers you want to change or add, we can run those pretty easily. Okay.
General questions for Julie? All right, citizen speakers, just a reminder, when you come to the mic, please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
We have 8 citizen speakers. What was that?
Oh, just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak, and please start with your name and address.
Okay, my name is Russell Nimke. I live at 515 Elm Street. I just wanted to thank all y'all for y'all's time. This board has put in a lot of time over the years, and I appreciate that. Also, I want to thank the city forefathers and mothers for this board and this EIC, because I think Joe was part of the original starting. But without this meeting and this EIC board, I think you've seen how much money we're asking for, people are asking for in the community, and it's a lot. And without that, I don't think our city would have much quality life projects at all. So it shows how important y'all are. But anyway, first off, I think all these projects are very much needed. There's a lot of questions about the future, which I agree. Y'all are asking about the future, who's going to take care of things. I think a lot of those need to be addressed. And I think a lot of that happens due just to our city. I mean, I think I'm the youngest person in here. Maybe Kevin's a little older than me. So, but I think us as young people in the city need to step up too. So with y'all's help, hopefully we can encourage some people to do that, along with our foundations. I mean, we have foundations that are on this board. There's future nonprofits coming in on this bond. Future nonprofits asking on this bond. I wish that our foundations would help take care of the things that they want too. That would be nice. I think we got to try not to forget about our current parks. Then we're asking about the Parks Board's recommendation. And one of those scenarios, it leaves out about $10 to $12 million on our current parks. So we're asking all this money. And if you look at option number, I don't know what it is, there's a lot of them. Michael could probably help me with that. But there's one option that we're saying that we actually like. It leaves out $10 to $12 million out of our own parks, and we're only giving $800,000 to our current parks out of that option, leaving out 10 to 12. So just something to think about. And I think that's about it. Like I said, I think we just should think more about our current parks and our future parks and how we're going to take care of them. So as a city of Kerrville, hopefully we can put more money towards our budget and not have to ask EIC for so much money. You're all money guys, and I appreciate that. So hopefully we could take care of our own stuff, including Granger McDonald Park. It's going to be awesome, and it's going to go all the way around, and it's going to make our city really excellent. So I just wish all this could get done, but not so much money grabbing, more money saving and then buying stuff. So thank you very much for your time.
Barbara Dewell Ferguson.
Barbara Dewell Ferguson. I live on Dry Hollow Drive here in Kerrville. One of the things that was briefly touched on, I'd like to emphasize it again. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board in the City Council packet for last week put in additionally the $2 million request regarding the Guadalupe River Center and developing Granger McDonald Park was not received in time for due diligence and consideration by the board. But the topic was broached. The consensus of the board remained the same. The priority is existing developed parks and needs first, and the board was not in favor of prioritizing Granger McDonald Park at this time. I think it's really important to keep in mind what the Parks Advisory Board said. We've asked them to look over all these different needs, and after doing so, that was their consensus. And I think disregarding that is to our detriment. One of the concerns I have regarding that, I was in the meeting when the foundation first presented the project. It's a stunning project. I was all in favor of the foundation that they formed, and Mr. Anderson's participation on that foundation's board. But I was in favor of it as a private foundation venture. And at that time, they asked the city just to give them a stamp of approval. Yes, we think this is a nice idea. They said there would be no ask involved. And now today we sit here with a $2.2 million ask that the Parks Advisory Board has not supported. And furthermore, it has just recently come up, I believe in the city council meeting was the first time publicly that it was said that they would volunteer to maintain the park. And then today I hear the words, and operate the park. Well, there's a whole lot of issues that go along with that. Do they determine open and closing hours? Do they determine fees? Do they determine at what level the park will be maintained? I noticed that the driveway into the event center and all the parking for the event center is provided by the city. It's not just a park. And I would really encourage the EIC to take this one off the list and to give the foundation time to raise their funds and to do what they originally said they had planned to do, and proceed as a private venture. Also, I'd just like to remind the EIC board that every dollar they spend, there's an opportunity cost to it. What will you not be able to look at because $20 million was committed here today?
David Bartles?
My name's David Bartles. I live at 200 McKay in Kerrville. I'm on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. There was a statement made at the last city council meeting that upgrading the Olympic pool to year-round and having the swim teams practice there would not provide any economic benefits, so I have some ideas on that. Back in my Corpus Christi days, I was president of a USA swim team. It was called Bay's Edge Aquatic Team. We had 2 swim meets a year, one in June and one in October. They were both 3-day meets. These swim meets, it became so big that I had to get with the Convention and Visitors Bureau to make sure we had enough hotels in that area. We bid on and won 2 short course championship meets in February. Those were 4-day meets. I wanted to point out that there will be 3 swim teams practicing at the Olympic pool year-round. C3 swim team is a local team. They're a TAAF and USA swim team. Tybee High School and Shriner. High school swimming is a fall and winter sport. It starts in September, ends in February. The high school team, if they practice here, they're going to want to host a meet here. The area high school swim teams, the closest to us are Bernie, Uvalde, Fredericksburg, Medina Valley. Of course, there's a bunch in San Antonio. At one time, I thought Our Lady of the Hills had a swim team. I don't know if they still do. The high school and USA short course would use 25-yard course. If the bulkhead could be removed, we could also use that pool for USA long course meets, which is a 50-meter pool, and that's what they want. As far as Shriner, Shriner's a Division III school. I found out that there are 200 Division III schools that have college swim teams, more than any other division. I was stunned by that. There's 13 in Texas. So if Shriner's going to practice here, they're going to want to have swim meets here also. So I'm talking, multi-day meets, hotels, restaurants. There will be some economic benefits to the city of Kerrville. I just wanted the board to know that. And I'm not criticizing anyone for saying that there wouldn't be any economic benefits. Kerrville's never had this before. I just don't think people knew. So Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you.
Angela Kennedy.
Angela Kennedy, 547 Fairway Drive. Good afternoon, EIC. Thank you so much for considering Heart of the Hills Heritage Center as part of this bond package. The Heritage Center Board and I would like to thank the City Council and the EIC Board for thinking about additional funding to support the renovation of the AC and Murder Shriner House. The renovation project has been in development since before the pandemic. Including the house and the quality of life projects to be funded by the bond sale is critical for the realization of the Heritage Center. The house was entrusted to the City of Kerrville to renovate and utilize as an educational public space to further enhance the library campus. The current funding for the renovation would only accomplish the exterior restoration of the house and minimal landscaping. The house cannot effectively serve the public without additional funding to renovate all 3 floors. The increased renovation costs are a direct result of the pandemic. The pandemic delayed the project, and because of the pandemic, the cost for construction, materials, and large systems like HVAC and elevators have increased exponentially. The Shriner House is the ideal location for our community's Heritage Center. Its location on Water Street is next to one of Joshua Brown's camps. Its proximity to the river trail is an ideal spot to host visitors, and its proximity to the library and utilization of that entire campus is the ideal location. The Heart of the Hills Heritage Center is committed to celebrating the heritage and history of Kerr County and the surrounding Texas Hill Country, and we intend to do this through community-sourced collections, interactive exhibits, special programming, and hands-on programs for all of the citizens of the area. Recently and historically, community members have been outspoken about the need to preserve historic sites here in the town of Kerrville to maintain the charm and character of this place. The AC and Murder Shriner House is paramount to this endeavor. Please help preserve the site as it serves a place where our community can connect to the past, engage in learning, and to help enjoy and broaden your perspectives in understanding of what this place is and what it could be for the future. Heart of the Hills Heritage Center is committed to celebrating the heritage and history of Kerr County, and the Shriner House is paramount to that endeavor. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Nye Saladin. I live at 1015 Morningside Drive, and I'm in the chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We have an amazing variety of parks in Kerrville that attract a wide variety of visitors and residents, and even more amazing is the highly trained and professional staff of the Parks and Recreation Department. This department provides operation and maintenance of 27 parks totaling 1,057 acres and a whole slew of other responsibilities. I want to remind everyone here of how awesome our Parks Department is, and decisions on each individual component to the operation of the whole is not made in a vacuum. As I presented at City Council, there is a process in place to determine projects for the parks. I have objections to the funding breakdown that came out of the City Council meeting that was not the recommendation of staff, nor the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, specifically about the funding of Granger McDonald Park. Listening to the presentation of the GRC board via various media outlets, it would appear this project is going to be a game changer for Kerrville. But there are a lot of things that have occurred in Kerrville that collectively are game changers and work together to make Kerrville a great place to visit and live. And everyone's idea of what exactly put Kerrville over the top or will put Kerrville over the top is as unique as the person making the claim. As chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, I have many questions about the development of this brand new park, especially the EIC funding request of $2.2 million that came in at the last minute after repeated statements that the GRC project was not going to ask the city for any money. I wish the Guadalupe River Center Board had come and presented to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for questions and answers. All of these boards are made up of citizen volunteers, all passionate about the missions they represent. It would have been a respectful step in the process. Instead, I don't know if there's an engineering study in place. I wonder how the handicap accessible docks are going to work with the water level so low. The foundation says they'll still do programming if the building doesn't happen right away. Where are people going to go to the bathroom? I don't get to ask about the $756,000 for landscaping in a drought, which seems excessive for a 1.5 acre park since there's not one city park that would ever get that as a budget item for landscaping. Bottom line, it appears to me the Granger McDonald Park, a city park, has not been part of the process. I'm not opposed to this park, but I am opposed to the Guadalupe River Center asking for a Cadillac of budgets when other city parks get by on a scooter budget, and the Granger McDonald Park has got the line.
Larry Howard.
Well, y'all pack a lot into one bond, don't you? 3 minutes to go over 10 items. My name's Larry Howard. I live at 503 Oakland Hills here in Kerrville. I've served on city council before, and I've served on ESC, so I know where you guys are sitting and what you've got in front of you. There's a lot of things on the list. I know Ashley and her crew do a great job with the parks, and I've been a park supporter for the 40 years I've lived in Kerrville. I love the river trail. I don't think there's enough river trail that we can build. And if we want to go around Nimitz Lake, I think we start planning today about a 3, 5, and 10-year plan, and let's go around the lake. Friesen Nichols did a study on that bridge below the dam, and it's a low water bridge. It's about $5 million, and that removes section 4, which is that $10 million price tag. So that's something to think about. And the Guadalupe Street, downtown to G Street has already been halfway designed and funded for phase 1. The environmentals and the culture are already done for phase 2. I think it deserves top priority in this list of items that are just coming to light when everybody's rushing things to a bond. I know that every dollar y'all spend is a dollar that somebody else has paid. The 25,000 citizens that live in Kerrville that pay that half-cent sales tax on everything they buy, from cigarettes to gum to milk and baby formula. We need to be building quality of life stuff that benefit those 25,000 people, that they can go out and walk every year. And Greg, to your point, what does it cost to replace the greens or replace the thing? This is the best cost return ever. We've got decades-old river trail that doesn't require any maintenance at all, no repair. So we don't need to worry about those things. I think the more parks and the more river trail we can build is the best use of our funds. I appreciate your time.
Blaine Guerrero.
This is going to be kind of tough because Peter Lewis just took my glasses when he left 20 minutes ago.
Do you want mine?
I'm good. My name's Lane Guerrero. I live at 307 Lakewood Drive here in Kerrville. We have our own town lake here in Kerrville, just like Austin does. It's called Nimitz Lake. It's close to downtown. It's narrow, which makes it ideal for spectators to watch various water sports and recreational activities. It is everything Town Lake has except for the proper access. Today, I'm here to voice my support of the allocation of funds towards the development of Granger McDonald Park. This proposed investment provides ample permeable parking, an 80-foot wide river access ramp, staging area for large events, and handicap-accessible floating piers and kayak launches. The piers and launches will be attached to a 14-foot wide, 200-foot long boardwalk that sits right on top of the riverbank. Having a boardwalk prevents the river channeling and preserves the existing riparian buffer. As a whole, these lakeside park improvements will provide families with a new quality of place with over 100 yards of direct water access, which will ignite the growth of activities in the area. And as the lake becomes more active, the land development around the lake will become more active, which over time directly contributes to an increase of ad valorem and sales tax revenues. Currently, the largest lake activity is the swimming portion of the Kerrville Triathlon. Swimming is the first of 3 events that make up a triathlon. The area along the river is in front of Happy State Bank, which has been utilized by the event sponsors for over 10 years, is currently up for sale. The event is in danger of losing its current river access, which can currently accommodate 2,000 swimmers. The park's completion will secure a new riverfront for the event and provide extra space for the Kerrville Triathlon to continue to grow. Last year, the triathlon generated over $2 million in direct economic impact. Second, having a boardwalk, open riverfront spaces, handicap-accessible floating piers, and river ramps will provide a new location for our city to host and watch a variety of water sports on the river. Some of the ongoing events and programs this river park will support is sailing camps, regattas, radio-controlled boat regattas, open water swim competitions, sprint kayak, paddleboard races, scuba certification, cycling tours, motor club meetups, And altogether, we estimate that in aggregate, these events will bring in over 8,000 visitors to our city each year, generating another $1 million in local economic impact. And finally, I want to talk about the River Center Foundation. Austin had a similar problem years ago, and they had an appetite for these projects on Town Lake. And they formed a partnership, a private 501c3 called the Trail Conservancy. And that's done well for them for the last 50 years. Now, whether or not a foundation can maintain a park or not, I think, will the Heritage Center go out of business? Will the Trail Conservancy go out? But currently, our program is to maintain this park, and we feel like we're confident that we can handle that.
Thank you.
Maggie McGee.
Maggie McGee, 2729 Indian Wells Drive. I just wanted to look back like Joe Herring did at your workshop and speak in favor of your ability and the use of the sales tax revenue bonds to fund important community improvement projects, quality of life projects. Joe said it eloquently all his years serving this city, that was one of the reasons EIC was founded, was to please fund necessary and beautiful improvements to our community that would be enjoyed by all the people. So I just ask you to use your authority, and I ask you to please approve the bond ask from City Council and all of its components. I just want to mention one other thing, and I wasn't going to mention it, but Barbara did before, so I'm just going to mention it quickly. Lennar's coming up in executive session. The only thing I want to say about that, it meets all the criteria for our need for workforce housing. Thank you.
That's our last citizen speaker. All right, so we've got conversation to go over, and unless anyone feels very strongly differently, I'd like to start with what council put before us, one item at a time, and just go through those items.
Yeah, as the member of the city council, which is also serving on this
Right.
board, I want to emphasize several things. First, it was a council request, not a demand. We understand that this board is independent. We were very thankful for the joint meeting with this board, and that meeting informed our request. We as a council took the comments and discussion of our joint meeting with the EIC to make the request before you. The vote was 4-1 to make that request. Some of the items on this package were discussed when you were on council and when you were on council, especially the CALA. It's been a problem for a long time, and the pool, which has been a problem for a long time. I don't know how old the pool is, but I know as a child I took swimming lessons there, and I turned 62 this year, so that pool is old. But the thing I want to emphasize today, the city council recognizes the independence of this board and respects this board. We make this as a request, and we had a lot of discussion in coming to these items. And if there are any questions how the council came to that, I can't speak for the council, but I'll try from my memory to tell you why we made the decision as we did. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And also, thank you to all the citizens that were here. I found, and I'm sure the other members here found all of your remarks to be very well thought out and respectful, and all of the points that I heard personally, I thought were worth considering. So thank you for being here and being part of this process. That being said, I think we'll start with the Callow Theater, as that's the first item that was recommended. Now, if you want to ask Joe anything about council's decision on that, please do so. If you have comments or want to share, I think what I'll do is I'll start with Celeste and we'll work this way. Second point, we'll just start with John and work back. And if you don't have a comment, that's fine. But if you have any questions, comments, thoughts on that item.
I think it's a very valuable part of what we offer to our citizens, and I would love to see it upgraded. So I am good with it.
I support it.
Nothing? Okay. All right. Kyle?
I agree, it's an asset to the community, no question about it. The only thing I would say is that I'd like to see a maintenance fund developed for things like this. This feels like a maintenance project to me, more so than an upgrade. And although I do support it, I think it's something that we need to have a budget line item for in the future.
I didn't get a chance to speak to it earlier. My mind wanders. But we have a facilities assessment packages out to bid right now. So we've received those bids back to go and do an in-depth analysis of our current facilities, as well as to include in those kind of, here's what the maintenance you need to be doing on those facilities. And so we're excited to get that back, give us a kind of a good roadmap for each one of these things, in addition to the asset replacement budget line items that we've started to put in. Now they're small amounts, and we hope to increase those as each year goes by. But I just want to let y'all know that we've done that. Kim, do you want the slide back up?
Which one?
The one
Oh,
that
with the council approved,
approved.
that would be great,
Yeah.
sure.
Martin, can you bring back up the quality of life PowerPoint?
And I think this is a different order than what was on that slide, so after the Callow Theater, I'll go back to the order that was on. Oh, no, it was, okay. All right, okay. Greg?
Mostly share Kyle's sentiments. I'm also just kind of curious, and this may take longer, but I'm curious how the Callow Center is doing, and if ways that you measure its success. Is it in terms of attendance and just the
We can talk
table?
about,
Is it
yeah.
growing? Is it declining? What's happening just in terms of the events that go on there?
Some of we can speak to some of the specifics about the attendance, right? So we track that metric.
About 12,500 tickets last year.
12,000, so 12,500 tickets last year. As far as the quality of the projects, I think the Playhouse 2000 board members would be a good place to start with that ask. As far as, it's a hard question to answer, right? Because it's like a,
How do you measure it? I mean, that's.
I can't answer it now, but I understand your question.
If I could interject, I was on the original Playhouse 2000 board back when it was myself and the Valentines and Kent Werline, basically. And I think the ticket sales were suppressed by people still not wanting to be out in public last year after the pandemic.
That's true.
What I've seen of the work of that board, I'm no longer on that board, is that vast improvements over decades ago. Not only attendance, but a variety of cultural events, not there and in the VK garage. I was also on the board when the improvements were made to what we used to call the Kerrville Municipal Auditorium. And it was as if our community took a big swing, swing for the bleachers, That was a lot bigger, a lot more intent, a lot more, it was a grand plan. I don't know, there were those days where we thought, in 20 years, we're gonna need us a roof. But because it's a city asset, the city staff is addressing not only that, but places like the city garage and other items that the public really doesn't have as much interaction with. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's probably as good as I can ask for. I just was kind of curious generally the direction of things, but.
Yeah.
Does it pay for itself? Does revenues equal expenses?
No, but
Agreement
with Playhouse 2000, where,
runs the operations of the
yeah,
theater.
so we have an operations, we have a maintenance budget for it, and this one is really not unlike and I hate to kind of equate the two, but just an asset, any asset that the city has that gets older, right? The more and more and more you start putting into that maintenance budget each year. And when we use vehicles, we're like, hey, it's time to, that car is in the shop more than it's out on the road, and this is how much we had to pay for this. And so I like to think of it in terms of a park in that way. One of the things I did talk to Mr. Brown, the director over there, was about the implementation of fees to help defray those costs, specific to capital improvements. And we spoke about it earlier. Same with the golf course. I think those are two of the areas within this that it would be meaningful to future capital improvements. It wouldn't cover the full cost of it, but I think it would bear, 10 to 20%, depending on what that looked like, which is significant because, as time goes on, 20 years down the road, you don't know what the cost of a thing will be. So hopefully that answers your question.
My wife and I are a consumer user of the Calu, and I just think it's a treasure for this community. It's a cultural treasure, and I don't know anything about the finances of it. I do think I agree with what both Kyle and Greg said about. I think it's pretty clear with this, and I think with some of the other issues we're looking at, that we need to take a look at capital replacement budgeting. But I hope this community can find a way to continue to have this cultural asset. I think it's amazing, and I presume that as a community we can figure out a way to do it.
And I would agree with John and Kyle and Gary and everyone else, and I thank you guys for looking and taking that seriously and looking at ways to maybe prevent some of these things from coming forward in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, golf course, John. Or, I'm sorry, let's just stay with what's on the slide. Let's go with pool.
I have to rely on the advice and the expertise of the staff and the considerations of the city council. It obviously is an asset for our community. It has some of the same issues that we've talked about before with capital replacement and maintenance. And I think we need to do our best to maintain it, and if we can, later to continue to expand or improve it.
This is obviously the largest category. It seems like a lot of money for one project. I do have a question. So, if the C3 swim team uses it, and the Shriner swim team uses it, and the Tybee High School swim team uses it for workouts, if the member of the community wants to come in off-season and get some laps in, is that pool even going to be available for citizens to come and use it for exercise purposes outside the summer? Or is it going to be taken up with teams and clubs and tournaments and so forth?
So I think that, and we talked about this at the city council meeting a little bit, that's going to be kind of an evolution. So currently the pool is in operation only in the summer. And currently our staff is mostly high school students, college students who are on summer break. And that's the same statewide with most all pools that are like ours. And so if we endeavor to make it year-round in terms of, heating it up and making it available, I think that is going to happen in pieces, piecemeal. We can't turn around and go, yeah, this thing's going to be year-round. We're open from 8 to 5 or whatever that is. We don't have the staff to account for it at this point. And so we have...
That just doesn't give me a comfort zone, Michael. So we're building it with heating and capabilities of being year-round, but we don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, it's not in the current operating budget, right? And so I think like anything that we do, we'd have to build into it a little bit. But, heating or no heating year-round or not, the mechanical room and the ability for that needs to happen just for the life of the pool. right?
I get it.
For us to function though, in the way that you're discussing, there's a lot to flesh out still, right?
So I'm sure there's a much smaller number that allows you to replaster, do the mechanical work that needs to be done to be able to make the pool operational to continue doing what it's been doing. So I'm just trying to figure out what is the added benefit to the community outside of the potential competitive meets that could go there and the economic impact that goes with that. How much more are we paying than we need to pay just to keep doing what we've been doing out there?
Right. So the mechanical room and equipment, first aid room, that is the lion's share you see in there, right? That's not solely for making it year-round and heating it. That's upgrades that need to happen anyway. The remainder of that are in there, I mean, you see some locker room, team locker room, shower additions that would have a joint component where it's not just the citizens that are enjoying it. There's locker rooms for teams as well, right? Could it be pared down? Possibly, but this is the recommendation that came from Parks Advisory Board for what we're looking at. I don't know that we could take off from this list to pare it down and have that as a project in and of itself. I think they packaged this entire thing as here's package A.
Oh, go ahead.
So, just kind of asking the question from the other end in terms of additional recreational benefits that would be available to the community at large. And I'm specifically, I guess, talking about people who aren't engaged in organized swim teams. What exactly would the community be getting for this $7 million that they're not getting now?
Part of it is they would get to the continued use of the Olympic pool, because, like I said, we've been repairing and kind of doing that piecemeal as much as we can. I think this would put the pool in a position to be around for another 50 years, right? And give us that same thing that we've had since 29 years ago when Joe was a kid.
And that, I mean, because I know Ashley addressed this, that the pool is failing, you've got a significant leak or crack or whatever that cannot be addressed without significant repairs. Is that, so where on this list is that number? It doesn't ever talk about fixing the actual pool. Good question, huh?
It is a good question. It is a good question.
Number one.
This says mechanical room and equipment and first aid room.
Number 1 and number 4, yeah, so.
The pool deck, that's the coolcrete that goes around the outside of it.
So I'll have to pull up Ashley's old one that's got the breakdown of all the specifics.
included in
It's
this.
included within this, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, there's probably 70 things that we have to include within there, right? So we have to summarize
But
a
that's a
little bit.
big one.
That's sure, all right.
Kim, as a park board member, can I speak to some of the things that Greg was asking?
I'll ask the board if.
No, we don't need any, I mean, as long as you tell me it's in there, I believe you, it's just, that's
Not
kind of a glaring.
to what he was asking about, the benefits to the community and the cost.
I'll ask if a majority want to allow additional comments, okay?
So, I don't know if Michael has the slide where it started out at 30 million. So what I was gonna say to that is it's bare bones right here, like you're saying, you're like, where are all these things? That's about as bare bones as it gets, as a member of the board, as well as, what the community gets. So we mentioned the triathlon, we mentioned swimming things for the community. I'm a triathlon performer. The longest pool in this town is at Peak, and it's like 20 feet, it seems like. So you can't swim there competitively. You can't even train there. I train at Nimitz Lake. You spoke about how hard it is to get out of the river right now, and that has a lot of other issues. But those are the things the community could use. That I would swim there 3 mornings a week or
So
something.
it would be available for us to go and train during the week?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, like Michael was saying.
Again,
try
we've
to
got to
fill it out.
work it into it hasn't been considered as an option for us yet at all. And so we'd have to build that into the budget. It is a lot easier to find somebody who wants to work part-time year-round as opposed to somebody who wants to work only for the summer, right? It's hard to find somebody who's like, yeah, I'll work for 3
We don't
months
have
and
a
then be
business
done.
plan for it yet, basically.
But we will.
But I'm just saying, but as of today, you can't answer those questions. You can't say it's gonna be open May through September or April through November or.
Not yet. But we can certainly start working it up.
Fully in favor of the pool upgrades. I think if we have any hope of, there's a handful of projects on this list that actually move the needle for, our tax dollars that are going to come into the community. And if we have any hope of bringing anything back in, we need to do this so we can bring in the swim meets that they were talking about earlier. If that actually happens, it's going to take some leadership to get those here and get that done. But as long as we have that leadership in place and we work to get those here, I believe we can move the needle a little bit with this thing. So I think it's a critical project.
I would assume there's going to be usage fees for those groups that will be utilizing the space.
Yeah, yes. So, there's not a capital.
I mean, I don't think that it's
dollars,
gonna
right.
cause any major movement, but there would be a fee associated with that usage, more than maybe $1 a time a person comes into the pool.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. So if we were to go to a, partial year, 6-month stretch to full-blown annual, once we could figure out all the logistics behind that, setting up agreements with Shriner, with Tybee, with C3, as they work to envision having those things, right? Because Tybee doesn't have a swim team at this point. So, our hope is that this would help spur that along, right? And then, yes, we would like them to help share in the cost of figuring out how to operate it year-round.
Heather, Gary? Joe?
I support the upgrade to the Olympic pool.
Les?
Well, I definitely do. It was one of the first things that I was so disappointed in when I came to Kerrville, that this beautiful pool was not open more than about 10 weeks. And when they were working on the 2050 plan, I went to every single meeting and put my aquatics dots for the aquatic pool to enlarge the pool. I teach a master swim class there in the summers, and I do pay a fee to be able to do that, in addition to the people who are paying their fee to get into the space. And I believe that it will expand the number of users in the city that will take on swimming as more of a lifestyle. And it's difficult to do. There are not great pools here, and it is a really wonderful pool, but the facilities around it are not good, and the building and the locker rooms are not very nice. And so I don't think that some people want to go there because it's not particularly pleasant to be in those rooms in that facility. And so that really needs to happen as well. So I totally support this.
If you all want me to be a lifeguard out there, I did 7-8 years of it, and I can just do a couple hours in the morning before I get to the office. I'd be happy to be there watching y'all. I'm a good lifeguard.
Volunteering those hours, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, very good.
I took life-saving classes out there as well.
Me and you can do it.
Back to the slide on the bond.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Request. Go. All right.
There it is.
That's the one. Okay. All right. Moving to golf's list.
Again, I'm a user of the golf course. When I first moved to Kerrville, it was in much better shape. And as the shape of the greens and the sand traps and just the quality of the course has gone downhill quite a bit, I have stopped using this golf course very much, and I am totally in favor. It needs a lot of work out there.
I support the golf course.
Gary?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think that absolutely has to be done. My disappointment is we don't have a clue what that number really is. It could be 1.8 million, it could be 12 million. And so.
It'll be less than 4, I can guarantee you that.
Okay.
I mean, I think
Because that's all you're gonna get is 4, so you'll make it work before I get that.
We will.
But I'm in favor of it. That's my disappointment. We should have better numbers before it gets to this point. You should have asked us for the $15,000 to do the study. We would have had the study, would have known what Troon was gonna charge us, we could have had a good number to go in there. That's my personal opinion.
Yes, sir. I understand.
It's a backwards way of doing it, and I don't like doing things backwards.
Fully understand.
I support.
I support it.
Support.
I support it.
All right. Let's see, okay. Heart of the Hills Heritage Center, and we'll start with John. Is that the next one? Oh, yeah, that's the next one on our list to discuss. Or do you want me to come back to you?
No, I support it.
Okay.
I support it.
One of the thoughts I had on this, I do support the idea of the Heritage Center, but we have some flexibility on how we decide to fund this as far as we've got cash that we could consider using for some of these projects. Instead of just borrowing all this money, we've got a pretty nice cash balance right now that we could consider. And this is one of the projects that I would like to put into that bucket of possibly funding in another way. Taking on debt for 20 years, scares the, what out of me. But
Yes, sir.
if we have other options, I do support funding it, but I just think we ought to look at options as far as how we do that.
Gary? I support the project.
This one's very, very difficult for me. I was born and raised here. I guess this should be the most exciting one for me, but it's not. I think that building is a liability. It's not an asset. I don't care how much money you put into it. It's going to continue to deteriorate. And my anticipation is they'll be back in 5 years and they're going to need another $500,000 because something else has gone wrong with it. I've never traveled anywhere to a city and thought, boy, the first thing I want to do is go visit their heritage museum. It's just, it does not have an appeal to me. If we do fund it, I'm with Kyle. I think we could do it over a 2 or 3 year period of time, a couple of different, segments, and we could make it happen. I think, the majority of the board's in favor of it. I would not be in favor of putting it in this bond package.
It may surprise the audience, but I support this project. Now, let me speak to an intangible. In the 1930s, our community tried to build a heritage museum. They collected things from people who were alive when Kerrville and Kerr County were founded. They failed. You know where that stuff went?
Your office.
No, I wish. But the pioneer era stuff is gone. It's gone forever. Okay? I have spent 20 to 30 years collecting our community's heritage. It needs a home. I'm 62. And some days that feels young and some days that does not. And to preserve our community's history. Well, I used to go around giving speeches to the civic clubs, and my line was always this: a community that knows its story is a stronger community. But a community that throws away its history is a weaker community. And while I would be happy to get a lot of that stuff out of a print shop building, the true fact of the matter remains: we need to preserve our history. This is our first step to do so. This was a plan before the pandemic. This was a plan before inflation. This was a plan before supply chain. What has happened is we had a plan, we had the funds raised, and economics got in the way. And I appreciate Kyle and Gary's point. I do. But I am in support of it in this bond package, and the budget includes money
For maintenance.
and other surprises.
That's right.
Contingency fund as well. So unlike many of the other projects, this one has something built in to try to prevent them from coming back, like you said, in 5 years and ask for another lump sum. Now, will they? They might, I don't know. But there's a plan, at least on this one project. Anyway, I support the project, and I support it being part of this quality of life project sales tax revenue fund.
I support the project.
I think I'm gonna go out of order here just because the existing park improvements is kind of a lump sum.
Yep.
Go on to the Granger McDonald Park improvements ask from Council Celeste.
I support this project. I think that having access to the lake is very much important, as anybody who was in the city council meeting heard me say the other day. It's really difficult to access it, even if the lake is full. It's particularly difficult now, but even when the lake is full, it's not easy access. And I think it's that lake will become a real center point for Kerrville when it has people who are sailing out in the lake and kayaking and birding from the lake and swimming in the lake, that it will be a point of lots of appreciation by many of Kerrville citizens. And it will be an opportunity for our youth to have a place to go learn to do some different kinds of active skills that they don't have many opportunities to do that now. So, yes.
Two things. I support the project, but I also respect what the Parks Chair and one of the Parks Board members said. Let me tell you what I think was happening at City Council the other night. I can only speak for myself. It's something similar to what Mr. Appel said years ago when he was on this board and voted to fund the initial river trail. I think what the council was thinking, I don't want to put words in their mouth, that this was a breakthrough thing. This would allow Nimitz Lake to finally be accessible by the community for recreational purposes. And I support the project, and I support it being in this bond package because I think it's transformational. Thank you.
I'm going to have, again, a very difficult time with this. When the Parks Advisory Board is against it, doesn't recommend it, doesn't think it'd be done. Do I think it is a neat project? Will it be, I don't know if transformational is the right word, that's an unknown. The soccer center and the baseball fields are supposed to be transformational. Hasn't worked out quite that way. So again, got some history there. I am disappointed that they're coming. The presentations I sat through, it was going to be privately funded. It came in at the last minute. I don't think it's right to put this kind of money into a brand new park when we have so many needs right now in our existing park system. I can't support it.
I really am excited about this project. I have thought a lot about this project and what it can do for Kerrville. I don't know that the time is right now. I do also think that we're not going to be out of money at the end of this bond package. And I think there are a lot of unknowns. My fear is also that in 3 years, we have to expend 95% of the money that we're borrowing. And as much as I will say that at the right time, with the right ask and the right situation, I will absolutely support this project. I don't think I'm able to support it as part of a bond package because I don't think we're there yet.
Deep breath on this one myself. I would say that the reason that we have the river trail that we have today was because there was a group of people that had vision to build it. The same holds true for this project. It's a visionary project. It will open up Nimitz Lake to the community as a whole, and I believe it will succeed. I'm 100% in the same boat as Kim. I think that this project needs to come before the board as a separate project, not part of the bond package. because I have never been presented to by anybody from this project personally. I had to ask for an email to be sent to me yesterday so that I could read about it myself. I've never been talked to about it personally by anybody other than friends. Nobody from the board has approached me to talk to me about it or anything. So therefore, I feel like it's preliminary and premature for us to throw money at it when it's an amazing project that all of us would love to have, but I just think we need to have this come to the board, ask us for something, and we can decide on it separately from this project. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I think it's thrown into this thing. We're asking for a big chunk of debt for this board to approve. I feel like this one needs to be tabled for a little while so that we can learn more, see where you're at financially, see what the plan is. Let us hear your business plan and go from there, and then we can maybe decide on it at that point. I really think it's a great project, but that's where I stand on it.
I think Nimitz Lake is a absolutely wonderful treasure that our community has that's desperately underutilized, and I think there's a group of private citizens that are working their tails off to try to make the best out of amazing treasure. And Lane, I want to just take a moment and recognize the work that you've done and many others in the community. There's a lot of private fundraising that's going on to make this happen. I think there's a reason why the ask is directed at Granger McDonald Park improvements rather than the Guadalupe Center project request. That would be privately owned. This is city property. I think that's why it's being requested. I think there are some questions that were brought up that could have been addressed, in the next couple of months, few months. But I think this whole bond proposal has come about in a fairly short order. And so, it kind of is what it is as far as the stage goes. But I absolutely do think that this level of funding through the EIC to help facilitate greater use and access to Nimitz Lake is very much appropriate given the potential that exists for that asset.
John?
I support the project, and I think I would like to I'd like to say that with regard to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about the foundation, and it's separate from the improvements to the city-owned Granger McDonald Park. What our foundation has been asking for is for the city to do what it considered 3 or 4 years ago. And when it was considering numbers went from $500,000 to $2.5 or $3 million into exactly or very similar to the things that we're requesting right now. So we're simply requesting that the city fund something that it previously had considered funding. And as has been said, we believe, and I think a lot of others do, that it would be a significant step forward for the community and the residents, opening up access to Nimitz Lake. With regard to, I think the comment was used that we didn't show respect for the procedures or of the Parks and Recreation Committee in considering the Parks Master Plan. I talked to E.A. Hoppe when he was still here over several months, who had expressed to me that he thought the whole project at that time that we were talking about, not just the Granger McDonald Park, but the broader project, ought to be taken before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and others for consideration in the master planning process. And he indicated to me, and I said, that's fine, we'd love the opportunity to present the project. And he said that he would take steps just to arrange that so that we could make a presentation or submit our project. And it never happened. So we did not, there was no disrespect at all for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And you know, I personally, and I think all of our board members of the foundation have a great deal of respect for what you do and for what the staff does in the city and for the, you know, the portfolio of parks that we have. You're doing a wonderful job. I just think it's important that you understand it was not lack of respect on our part. We had asked for the opportunity and we were never given it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Existing park improvements, I guess a clarification probably on that.
Catch-all for, if we could do playground upgrades. I mean, there's within, if you go back into this
You
list
have
right
you
here.
have a ranked list, and you would just start down that list and see how far the dollars got you?
We
Is
would.
that
Yes,
kind of
ma'am.
what would happen there?
Ashley's here.
Ashley was, do you want to comment?
So are you looking at the $800,000 number?
Just for some clarification, right, what that looks like.
$800,000, that would get us essentially the maintenance issues or the capital improvement issues to the Louise Hayes Park fountain addressed. We have some code issues that we need to address over there in the pump room. And that would also probably get us 2 playground replacements and shade structures, and that's it. And that would look like Guadalupe Park or Kerbal Shriner Park.
Just for context, my children played on the Guadalupe Park playground when it was dedicated, and they were 8 and 7, and now they're 38 and 37. So.
Okay. I think what we should do right now is entertain a motion, first of all, to see if we get a motion in a second on the resolution, or not resolution, the request that was made by City Council as is, and see where that takes us. And if not, I would look to you guys, but maybe go through that list one by one and see what is approved on that list and what we want to do at that point if it does not go through.
Can we have a little bit more discussion about this page?
The 800,000?
Well, and just this page in front of us right here.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
With regard to, if we're looking at a $20 million bond, and there's some question from a handful of the board here today about whether or not a couple of those projects belong in that $20 million bond. I personally believe that we've got a project on our table right here, the first one on this list, the finishing off the River Trail project that belongs in that $20 million bond. I think there's other ways to fund the River Center project and also the Heritage Center projects. I think they can all be funded, but they don't necessarily belong in the bond, in my opinion. Therefore, a different mix to me makes more sense than what's presented to us from council. Not that I'm not in support of those projects, I just believe that we could find a different way of funding them, maybe through our cash balance and things like that. So I don't know how you go about talking about that, but that's my position.
I'm in agreement with that position. I would love, if I'm not against the River Center at all. I think it is going to be amazing. I'm not sure the timing is right. That's not Town Lake. That's not Austin. I'm just not sure it's ready. I think if they came back to us a year or 2 years from now and said, look, we want to participate in this with you. We've got this much raised. if you can give us this much, I would be all in favor of that. The same thing with the Shriner House. So I know it'd be great to have, but we're talking 7.5 million when we're all said and done with that thing?
5.3 for the building.
Mm-hmm.
5.3 for the building, and then.
For the building.
The renovate, and then the grounds are.
So I'm just saying, so we've got $6 to $7 million in a place to display our heritage. Seems like a lot of money. I'm not against it. I'm just not sure that the EIC needs to be sitting down and spending another $2 million on an old building like that. Be cool, just not, maybe I could get into it if it was $1 million and somebody else was putting up $1 million. And I know y'all are putting up a lot more than that. That's just where I'm at. I would be much more in favor if we could approach it from those standpoints. I want the next section of the river trail finished. I've been working on that from day one. This is my last year on this board, and I would love to be able to say we've done the substantially completion of that project. So I'm 100% in favor of the pushing the river trail to G Street, and then see where it goes from after that. But that's been on previous EIC boards. That's been the path we were supposed to be following all along. Final thing I'll say is that what we really have to take into consideration, regardless of all these projects, and we need to take it very seriously, is that we are limiting all future EICs for the next 20 years on how much money they have to spend based upon the projects that come before them. And none of us know what those projects are. Financially, sure, they tell us it makes sense. We also, but we don't know what sales tax is going to do. We hope it keeps going up. We've got to take that very, very seriously. We're at 50% at our operating income right now. Is that right, Greg? About 50%?
Yes, just under 20 million.
I don't know how that plays into the conversation or what the next step is, but that to me is a very sobering number.
So I'd like to add to that, I mean, if we have any kind of taste for increasing this just a bit, if you look at a $21 million, you still stay under 50%, or right at 50%. And so when we were looking at our capacity, we are really quite low on what the potential capacity is for being able to have debt. And we're not going to be able to take on more debt for many years to come. It's my feeling that we should try to get the most of what you can get out of this. So 21 million stays at 50% or less. 21.5 is right at 50%. So, if we want to take a look at that, I've got these numbers worked out if anybody wants to see them.
They were on that chart that she presented.
Not the 21 or the 21.5. Anyway, and our ending cash balance goes up really substantially. So we're a long ways away from 4 million average balance that's coming up. So there are that potential to add to this debt or to approve, to add to this debt.
Well, I like Gary's point about this bond issuance, biggest one that EIC's ever taken on. That would take us to just under 50% of our current annual revenue encumbered by debt repayment, not counting the ongoing annual support that we do for the KEDC, not counting the services agreement with the city. So
that accounts all of that in there. I mean,
they're budgeted in.
It's all budgeted in.
That would be all budgeted.
No, I'm saying just the debt service alone would be just under 50%. When you consider the other sort of committed expenses that EIC has, it's going to be well over 50%. So what we have for projects that come before us every year is less. Maybe we got a couple of $1 million a year that we can do things with, and we've got some some other big challenges of community, affordable housing is one that really comes to mind. So we don't know what those other needs are gonna be a few years from now. So to me, it's not about what's our capacity to issue debt. It's more how much dry powder do we want to maintain for future EIC boards to be able to support projects that we're not even aware of today. And I like maintaining as much flexibility as we can. And if there are some of these projects that make more sense that we pull out of the bond to make it less than 50 and some of our unusually high cash balance, I'd rather do that and drive down the bond amount than
But when we left
try
the,
to maximize how much we borrow.
when we left the workshop meeting, it was my understanding we had the 3 primary projects. And that was at $15 million. And then all of a sudden we show up and they've added the 2 or 3 additional projects council has and has driven it up to $20 million. I had a pretty good comfort level at the $15 million ticket. You know, I thought we weren't overly burdened with future EICs. We could handle that on a pretty routine basis. But as, you know, anytime somebody opens up the checkbook, everybody reaches in and wants to get a piece of it. I get that. I mean, I do too. I'd love to add some things on here. But I don't know how we resolve that.
Mike, can I ask you a question? If we want to talk about if we want to start high level and just talk about the level of comfort in debt issuance, do we need to have a motion to have a discussion that we ourselves could be comfortable talking about 15, 20, 21 million so that we can start the ball there and then go from there? Or can we have just a consensus and say what level are you each comfortable with, and then kind of use that as or do we need to take a
You got discretion either way.
let's just do as of right now, just not a whole lot of conversation, just what level are you comfortable issuing debt? Where's your comfort level right now with that?
Really hard question to answer. And again, it was
Okay.
always a matter of what we were getting for that.
Okay.
To me,
Okay, well-
always. And, you know, we have the money in the bank right now to do some things with. And like I've said all night tonight, I feel like there's a couple of projects that could be moved into that cash funding position and take it out of the debt so that we don't have to have as much debt. And Gary, I agree with you on the 15 million. It'd be fantastic if we could keep it there. I don't think we get everything we want at that level. I think we're missing a couple of things that are pretty critical, and I think all these projects are great projects. So what do we need to do here tonight? I think, you know, it's difficult for me to just throw a number out there that I'm comfortable with debt-wise. I'd just much rather know, hey, we're going to get to finish the river trail. Have to make some have to. But to me, we can fund the Heritage Center in another way. It doesn't have to be $2 million service. It doesn't have to be $2.2 million to the River Center. I think we can talk to those folks separately and use it as opposed to doing it all in a 20-year note. You know, it scares me to do that.
So from a process standpoint, what we're looking for from a staff level is, are you comfortable with the proposition that council came up with?
Okay.
If not, and you want to modify that, then we'll take that back to city council for them to consider and then kind of come back.
So do you want us to respond individually to that, or how do you?
Yeah,
want
let's
us to
go
do it?
ahead and see if we can get a motion in a second, as far as the council request. So can we get that up and see,
Go ahead.
Go ahead now.
As a member of council, I feel duty bound to make a motion
There you go.
for the option as approved by council.
okay, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please let it be known by raising your hand. All right. 4. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, so that's good idea, Michael. You got us to the
It's
finish
not my
line.
idea, but I'll take it. So, to that end, I'll get, these are the next steps. You all have discussed next steps. I was fully prepared for us to take this back to council and have another round of this. But should you all decide you want to move forward with this, the next step would be a resolution calling for a public hearing authorizing the projects. And then we would set, I think we have it in here as a joint meeting with city council, but I think this would be the earliest date that you all would be able to do it. I think what we would probably do instead is just set a meeting for the November regular meeting for EIC, which is direct, and then city council is the next day, because that's one of those months where we pushed it back because of Thanksgiving. And because that would take those 60 days per state law that you have to wait and have that public notification for these projects. So, anyway, thank you for that, and now we're on to the next item.
All right. Given that item 7B has been approved, moving to 7C, which is a resolution by the board to consider financing the various projects in the approximate principal amount of $20 million and setting a public hearing on the expenditure of sales tax revenues relating thereto. I need to read the whole thing in. Is that good? Okay. Providing a notice of specific projects or type of general projects to be undertaken, approving and authorizing the publication of a notice of the public hearing relating to these matters, and approving other matters in connection therewith.
So moved.
Any presentation?
No, I don't have one, other than the question of the date, right, for the public hearing. Right. So, bond council had initially discussed having a joint meeting with both of y'all. It's problematic trying to get one board in a room at one time, let alone getting two boards in at the same time. So I would recommend that we hold a joint meeting, or not joint, we hold the EIC has a public hearing on the regularly scheduled date in November. So November 14th, I believe, is what we have. November 13th, so, yeah. We have it written here in the Exhibit A as November 14th, which is the city council date. So we'll just have to change that to, so November 13th.
Okay.
And then we can move on to the next steps.
All right.
No presentation.
No
I think I've done
presentation.
enough talking for y'all.
You
for
need a
tonight.
motion again? Or?
We have citizen speakers, I believe.
I appreciate it.
Mike, you good?
I didn't realize
Well, she told me before. I had a heads up.
Barbara Jewel Ferguson,
She's not here.
she's here.
Larry Howard,
Not here.
He also left?
and Maggie McGee.
Hold on. No, hold on.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. I have a motion on the floor to approve item 7C. Second. A motion is second. All in favor, please let me know by raising your hand. All right. Opposed?
4-1.
Very good. All right. So we're going to move into executive session at this time.
Need a motion, ma'am?
I would entertain a motion to move into executive
Move that we
session.
move into executive session under the provision of 551.071 and 551.087.
Second.
Do we catch them all, Mike? Those two? Okay. All right. We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Get out. We can meet here if y'all want.
Y'all good here? Yeah. 6:53, we are adjourned from executive session and return to the regular meeting. And let's see. There's nothing to take action on coming out of executive session. Any items for future agendas? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned at 6:54.